Thank you, everybody. Welcome to this session as the experts become Microsoft certified. We are very happy to be here. This is the Microsoft Learn team from Microsoft, of course, and we are very happy to be here at this DPS 2022. I would like to introduce our experts today. So I'm gonna start with Giuliani. Giuliani
Yes,
Padrao, would you introduce to your audience, please?
yes, super excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I work at Microsoft and I work in the data and AI content development team. I'm currently responsible to the Azure database portfolio, data administration. So if you have any questions, I noticed that there are some comments regarding some people that passed TP 300. So that's congratulations for the one who took the exam. And if you have any questions regarding this portfolio, just let me know. I'll be glad to help.
Awesome. Shannon, back to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Shannon Lindsay. I work with the wonderful people on this call on the data and AI team. I support the data analyst portfolio. So those are the PL 300 and DP 500 certifications. So if folks have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer. And yeah, that's it
Awesome.
about me.
Awesome. James.
Hi, everybody. So my name's James Herring. Hopefully I'm not too loud. And I own the content for the data engineering or the DP 203 in Learn, and I work with Shannon and Giuliani. So.
Awesome. Perfect. So my name is Sandra, and I am in the Microsoft Learn team as well. I work with these fabulous people and all the content team that creates all the certifications for Azure and for all our platforms and technologies. And feel free to ask your questions anytime. We have data experts here, as you heard, Giuliani, Shannon, and James, but we can also answer other questions on other Azure certifications, and even we can try our best to answer your questions on Power Platform and security certifications. We'll do our best. Let's start with breaking the ice here. So I'm gonna have this question for all of you. Um, which one was your first certification ever, Microsoft certification? And which one was your most recent certification? And how was the experience then and the experience now? So I'm gonna start with James because he was the last one last time.
Yeah, probably the first one to get one of the certifications. So my very first certification, which I failed, was the Microsoft SQL Server 6.5 DBA exam. I did ultimately pass it, but it was challenging. And then my most recent one was actually a renewal, which was the DP 100 exam. And I have two renewals that are waiting, which include the AI 100 or DA 100 and the AI 100 as well, 102 now. So what I'd say is different is the stress level, how I prep for exams is different because I believe in taking an exam or a test to fail, so you know what you don't know. Because until you know that, you can't properly prep for an exam. It's the same with GMAT, GRE, any type of exam you take it to fail. It can be expensive, but it's a valuable lesson.
Awesome, awesome. Shannon, first and most recent certification, and what did you find different in the experience?
Yeah, happy to share. So my first certification was relatively recent, within the past 5 years, I want to say. It was there were two exams, the 700 something. It was an Excel exam and a Power BI exam. So it was right when Power BI was new, and it was for a BI certification. So that was my first exam. And I think my most recent exam was probably Azure Data Fundamentals, actually. I think The difference is just in how I prepare. I think when I first started prepping for exams, I did everything on my own because I didn't really know anyone else that was preparing for the exams. And now I have actually started a number of different study groups, and I work with my Power BI user group, and I get a lot of friends together to prep. So it seems way less scary.
Awesome. Giuliani.
For me was SQL 2000 was my first one. Yeah, and after that, I took a few others to get. I remember that getting the credential was kind of MCDBA or something like that. I don't know. James probably knows about that. And then there was one elective certification to become a MCDBA. You would need to have, which I think was a programming in C Sharp, which I took. And failed, of course, because I'm not a software engineer or a developer. And it took me a while, yeah, to get there and eventually pass on that. So it was tough because of that. It was not just database. And what I like right now that we have these whole segregations, right? We have data scientists, and there are a few overlappings between the certification, especially in data, if you talk about it, but they're really segmented. So that's good. It's easier to become a specialist, right? Because I feel that in the past it would be more generalist because those certifications were covering a wide range of features and products. And my most recently certifications is actually DP100, which is the data science one, which is, yeah, it has a special place in my heart just because I've been studying for it quite a while for now. So yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome. Okay, so we have already some questions from our audience. I'm gonna start, and you can decide which of you experts can answer. So we have a question from April. I'm working towards a junior position in data, ideally as a data developer or engineer. I recently passed the P300 and I'm working on portfolio projects. Next, I'm working toward DP203. As a junior database engineer, what should my resume look like at a basic level? So I guess is what topics or certifications or training would you recommend for April as a junior database engineer?
So I'll take this. Juliana might also want to add to that as well. I think it's great that you already did the 300. I would typically put a data engineer before 300 because typically the engineers might tend to move towards a database administrator type role later on. But data movement tools, anything that's talking about transformation, data wrangling, and pipelines are a big element as well that should be on your resume. I'm looking for someone that can take data sets from multiple sources, heterogeneous sources, and integrate them into a denormalized structure that can then be imported into another data source that's homogeneous. And that's really what I'm looking for. And some of the keywords I might be looking for, like I said, are data analysis, data wrangling, basically transformation pipelines. And some of the languages would be around Hadoop if you're using some of the Hadoop tools, Hadoop Data File System, HDFS, SSIS, ADF, Azure Data Factory, Informatica, of course, is always a plus. And then IBM has some of the closed box tools, I'll call them, which are more old school, but still very relevant, very powerful. And a lot of the Hadoop transformation with the Spark engine does well with that. So hopefully that answers your question.
Awesome. And where do I find all that content, James?
On Learn, aka.ms.learn. So
Actually, we have a new one, learn.microsoft.com.
yeah, that's
We just
right.
announced the new Microsoft Learn product family. So if you haven't checked on it, go to learn.microsoft.com and I'm sure all these topics that James just mentioned I'm sure we have plenty of learning paths and modules. Some of them with with labs and with knowledge check. So you should have all the tools there. Cool. There is another question from our audience. Somebody, Giuliani, this may be for you. Ryan, he is preparing for DP300, Azure Database Administrator certification. What would you recommend for training?
Right. We do have on Learn, so you can take it, and then I'm gonna link here. I'm in the chat. I was just typing it for you. So all the Learn modules associated with GP300. So you can take it on your own pace, and we do offer some virtual labs, which is awesome because it's a virtual machine for you. So you can try all the labs, and we offer a subscription inside of that virtual machine in that environment that you can try the labs so you can have a fully immersed experience. So I'm gonna link that in the chat in a second.
Yeah, and Ryan, if you weren't able to attend, Giuliani delivered a fantastic session on how to prepare for exam DP 300. That was like 3 days ago here at DPS. So the recording should be ready for you to go and join. So you will see all the links to the virtual labs, to the content, to all the resources that we recommend you to for this exam. Shannon did the same for exam DP 500 for our Azure Enterprise Data Analyst certification, and James did the same for the exam DP 203 Azure um, Data Engineer. Oh my gosh,
It's too much
It's the
data.
end of the week.
too many data, something. Awesome. So we I would like to, if you can comment, because we hear this question very often from our learners, and it's like, Microsoft, how do you come up with a new certification? Like how, if I'm gonna invest my time and my money in doing all these exams, how am I sure that this is the right certification that the market is asking for, that this is aligned to the job that people are doing every day? So can any of you comment of how do we create certifications, and what is the process, and how do we make sure that this is really something valuable in the market and for people to invest?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I am happy to attempt to answer this question, and I would love if anyone else can jump in. But we recently went through this process with the new DP 500 certification. That's our Azure Enterprise Data Analyst Associate certification. Quite a mouthful. But the way that we determine when there is a new certification needed is actually dictated by the market. And fortunately, we are the data and AI team, and we look at the data. That's where we start. So we look at data from employers and also job seekers. We use a couple of different platforms, one of those being LinkedIn, to understand what skills are required out in the market and what jobs have openings and what technologies those folks are needing, both from on the job opportunity side and also on the job seeker side. So that's where we start. We get our cues from the market. We then have a number of different processes that get kicked off after we think we need a new certification. And those involve, we have a series of meetings with subject matter experts from the field. We also send out surveys to folks that are acting in that role. And then we go through a very formal process where we dictate, or rather where we determine, what are the actual skills that are involved in this role. And again, that is working with a group of subject matter experts who, tell us, yes, your hypothesis that this is an actual job in the market is true, but these are the skills that we're actually seeing, and these are the Microsoft technologies that are used. So we really like to make sure that we're aligned with the market. And I think a nice example of this for me would be that, we recently shifted in the data analyst space from having the DA 100 exam, which was a data analyst certification, but it really only covered one technology, and that was Power BI. So we went back out to the market and we looked and we said, okay, what technologies are data analysts really using? And of course, we're looking at what's available in the market now, and we're also forward looking. So we're thinking, okay, as we're getting into analysts that are working in an enterprise setting, who are working with bigger data, what technologies are they using? Is it just Power BI, or are there other technologies involved? So throughout this process, which the whole thing takes about 6 months, I would say. And throughout this process, we identify what is the actual job role that is being done, what are the technologies that are being used, and then, of course, what are the skills that are involved in that job role. And then eventually we decide, okay, this is what we're going to test on for the certification, this is the learning content we're going to deliver, et cetera, et cetera. Does anyone have anything else to add?
So, yeah, I mean,
I do. Yeah.
oh, no, go ahead,
James.
Juliana.
No, you can go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, the one of the coolest things to me is there's a big misnomer that Microsoft does adaptive type testing. We do not. We use Angoff methods for testing, which uses, and this is for the grading, which uses a scaling system with a psychometrician that helps us determine what the proper scoring and what the proper weighting should be for a certain section within an exam. And I think that's an important part because I believe at one point in the 80s or early 90s, we may have tried adaptive testing and determined that it wasn't for what we need. So we use Angoff methods, and there is no such thing, I guarantee you, as a trick question on a Microsoft exam. We just don't do that. So, but go ahead, Juliana.
Yeah, I don't think I have any more to add. You both covered pretty well what the JTA really means, and yeah, our standards on that.
Yeah. I wanna drive you to. We have a couple of questions here that I would like your answer for our audience. So we have from Dan, current certifications for Excel. Are there any for Power Query or Power Pivot? So I think we are putting in the chat the link to our Office certifications so that you can take a look there. But I would like maybe Shannon, you can help us a little bit with the Power Platform, kind of like fundamentals, Power Query, Power Pivot. Where are those technologies in our current portfolio?
Yes, happy to try to answer this. We will get you that link for the Microsoft Excel certification in the chat. It's MO200, I believe. But another thing to note about, Power Query and Power Pivot is that Microsoft is really heavily investing in moving a lot of that towards the Power Platform. So we are working on integration between Excel and Power BI. And of course, the engine underneath Microsoft Excel, the Vertipack engine, is the same engine that is underlying Power BI. So if you're looking for certifications that really heavily feature Power Query and Power Pivot, that's actually going to be the PL300, which is the Power BI Data Analyst certification. So that is going to be using Power BI, not Excel, but as I'm sure you know, Power Query in Excel and Power Query in Power BI are very similar. Another that I would recommend would be the PL900, which is our Power Platform Fundamentals certification. And in that, you'll be introduced not only to Power BI, but also to Power Apps and Power Automate, and also Power Virtual Agents. So yeah, the Excel certification as it stands does not include Power Query. You're going to find that only in Power BI certs.
Yeah. What about the data fundamentals like the DP900? What technologies do we include in that one?
That's well, it's going to cover a lot of the data platform technologies that are going to be kind of high level, some SQL questions, not specific to maybe SQL Server, but SQL. and data storage. Of course, it's going to be focused, and I think you're going to find most of these exams nowadays are going to be focused on Azure. There's going to be a portion, especially when we talk about data engineer. We're not trying to teach anybody how to become a data engineer. What we're doing is taking people that have learned those skills over time and apply them to the skills and the technologies that they need within Azure. We could spend semesters training people on how to be a data engineer with no luck. It's just trust me, I do.
Totally.
It really is data platform fundamentals. If I was going to take DP 300, DP 203, and even the AI AZ 900 level exams, I would always take those first if you want to get the experience of a much more difficult exam like DP 203. I remember when it was 200 and 201, I took them in each one of those. I helped write some of those, and they still took me an hour and 45 minutes to finish each one. So taking an AZ 900 or a DP 900, you're going to get introduced to that. And I think we had on my team, we were trying to see who could get the best time. Like I finished DP 900 in 14 minutes, and got a 780 or whatever. We didn't care about the score and passed. But no, DP 900 is a good introductory to data platform fundamentals in Azure, but also in general from a data platform perspective.
Awesome. Juliani, I think this question is for you from Arthur. I've been working with SQL Server technologies for quite a long time, but I've never taken any of the old exams or certifications. And he finally decided, and it's like, I don't find what is the exam for SQL Server? Where can I find it?
Well, guess what? The P300 always covers a lot of what is required to a on-prem DBA. So especially because we do have offerings like on-premises, which is SQL Server running on a VM, which is there's almost 100, really close to 100% of compatibility if you're running on premises. So all the knowledge that you already have on that will not be disregarded because you're moving or you're trying to do a DP300 exam or something like that. So I do recommend at this point that you try to fill the gap between your on-premises knowledge, DBA knowledge, and what it needs to be, what it would take to be required to pass a DP300 exam. So trying to find that probably pass monitoring, I would think, wouldn't change that very much. Although we have Azure features to cover monitoring and automation, but since you have already DBA experiences, on-premise experience, so I wouldn't think it would take a lot of time to prepare for a DP300 and Azure DBA certification and exam.
So when we talk about the Azure Database Administrator role, we are talking about on-premises, in the cloud, and hybrid. Is that what you
Yes.
are? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Perfect.
It
So
covers all the
it's actually
offers.
a great way for you to expand on your skills and start understanding moving from on-premises only to the reality in many companies, which is they have some things on premises, they have some things in the cloud, right? So this would be
And
a good
yeah,
path.
it's a really good point because most recently we included 2 new modules related to migration. So if you are on premises, I probably eventually you're gonna be migrating at a point in time, right? Depending on the company, on your environment, you're gonna be planning or thinking about migrating, and the P300 will also prepare you for that. So
Awesome, awesome. James, you mentioned something when I asked you your most recent certification, and you were saying that you actually did a renewal. I'm curious about this renewal because this is something that we announced not that long ago, like a year ago, this renewal process. So it's like my certifications expire, and then to renew my certification, what do I have to do?
So you don't have to really do much except check your email. Make sure that when you get certified, or you have you don't use a burn account. I guess is what I'm saying. I use my standard personal account because whenever I take an exam, this is a personal transcript. I don't keep it with my company. I keep it with me. And what I'll do is when it gets about 6 months to till time for me to renew, I'll get an email from the Learn team that says it's time for you to take the renewal. You've got up until the date that it'll give you the date. Mine there is next to or in February where they come up to expire. And as long I can go to this link that they send, and or I can go to my Learn dashboard and I can do the renewals there. And it's an open book test that is looking that for you to stay current on the technologies that we're using, and you can take it as many times as you want. There's no cost associated with it, um, and once you pass it, you're certified for another year. And this is a great thing because you don't have to spend all that time studying. You just have to keep current with the technologies. I think I still hold about 9 certifications. I'm not one of these guys that likes to go out and get all these certifications. I've worked with people that have 60, 70 certifications, and I'm like, whatever. But I like to have the ones that are relevant to the roles I'm doing. And it's just so much easier with the renewal. I hope that answered it, Sandra.
Yeah, and because I want to promote our beautiful new Microsoft Learn website, learn.microsoft.com. I'm gonna pick on something that you say, which is about your transcript and your dashboard. We have a brand new dashboard included already in the Microsoft Learn website. So if you go to learn.microsoft.com and you log in and click on your profile, you will see all your certifications and you will see which ones are ready for renewal or in that renewal window. So that's another way for you to know when you are ready to renew your certification. Don't let it expire. You start getting these notifications 6 months before they expire, and you have until the last day. But what's your recommendation? When should I do it?
As soon as possible. I mean, start. I mean, it's just it's take the test to fail it, right? Learn what you don't know, because when we went from AI 100 to AI 102, it changed dramatically, and I failed that thing several times. Even though I was still writing, I was still a data scientist at the time, and I was like, "Whoa, I got to get more into the artificial intelligence, the bots and stuff," because it had changed dramatically. So I would say as soon as possible. And as with any study and prep, put it on your calendar and stick to it. You have to take time, give yourself permission to steal from somebody else, to set aside time to prepare for your own educational results. So
Awesome. I wanna ask you something. Each one of you is kind of like in a specific area of data, and we have a pretty substantial portfolio of certifications. So, Giuliani, for a person that is a database administrator, and Shannon, for somebody who is a data analyst, and James, for somebody who is a data engineer, out of all our portfolio between Azure certifications, data and AI, specifically Power Platform, for each of these audiences or areas of expertise, which certifications and training do you recommend? And this is kind of like appealing to what James was saying. Is like, we have so many. Some people like to have all of them, but some people want to be more focused. So the question for each one of you is, database administrator, data analyst, and data engineer, which ones are the ones that you would recommend, like a must have for each one of those roles? So I'm going to start with Giuliani.
Yeah, for a database administrator, definitely the P300. And if you want to go towards programming or analytics, or if you want to have that breadth as well. I would also take DP203. But yeah, if you're talking about mainly truly DBA work and only working with that, I would say the P300. And I would first go to our Learn modules that we have available. And I think we pasted the link in the chat box. So check it out. It's all out there at your disposal. You can take it and you can do Learn on Demand labs and everything. It's available for you. So there is no excuse. That's what I want to say, honestly. But yeah, definitely the P300 in my first go-to platform to find anything learning material related would be the Learn platform.
Awesome. Shannon.
Yeah, I'm happy to go next. So the data analyst role is really interesting because I'm sure, as everyone knows, it can be really broad what is considered a data analyst. In some organizations, an analyst may be working in a department, crunching numbers in Excel. They're in Excel day in and day out. That is their role. Whereas in another organization, they may be similarly sitting in the business using Power BI every day, distributing reports within their own org. And then in other organizations, you may be, I don't know, preparing data models for other people to build reports off of. So this one kind of spans really widely. Maybe you're even a data viz expert. Someone else builds the models. So what we've tried to do is right now it's broken into 2 certifications distinctly. But before you do either of those, I would recommend the Azure Data Fundamentals, so the DP 900 certification. That just makes sure that you're familiar with, data in the cloud and also the structure of data. So structured versus non-structured data, relational databases versus not. Some concepts that may be new to people, particularly if they're coming from the Excel side of the house. That's where I come from, so that's where I'm most comfortable. But once you take that DP 900 certification, the next step is going to be the PL 300, which is the Power BI Data Analyst certification. And that really just walks through, ingesting, transforming, and displaying data in Power BI, distributing reports, making sure that you're able to get people the information that they need within your department or your role. Then finally, I look at this as a little bit of a journey or a ramp. The final kind of pinnacle of analyst certifications at present is our DP 500 certification, and that is the Azure Enterprise Data Analyst Associate certification. And so that one, of course, you're going to need those fundamentals. So you're going to need to know data fundamentals. You're going to need to know Power BI. And then we're going to add on a few technologies. So you're also going to need to know how to work in Azure Synapse Analytics. You're going to need to know a little bit of querying data using Transact SQL. And then finally, a little bit of governance using Microsoft Purview. So it really is a ramp, but I would start with that DP 900. And I think I mentioned this in the chat too, even if you are not planning to take all of those certifications, I would absolutely recommend that you log on to Microsoft Learn, go through the learning paths. If it's something you know, click through it, take the knowledge checks at the end to confirm that you really know it, do the hands-on labs and practice, and then, eventually you'll land where you need to be. So sorry, very long answer.
No, that's a beautiful answer. Thank you, James. What about data engineers? Like, what's in that area of expertise?
So it's like Shannon's. It's very broad. So some of the newer trends are around some of the Python, some Scala, but really one of the prime technologies is going to be Spark and notebooks, the use of notebooks. And the reason for this is because with data engineering, we have a lot of our collaboration with other teams. So we're going to be working with the data analyst, a DBA, and then also a data scientist on the other end as well. And what we're looking and aiming to do is have these notebooks where if I'm a data engineer and I know Python, I can write in Python, but I can also use Markdown and bring images in to help them see the workflow. Or I can write in SQL, either PySQL, which is PySpark, I should say, SQL. And it's just a lot of them. What I would suggest is that The difficulty is all the technologies that we use with the data engineer, which includes Azure Databricks, Synapse Analytics, notebooks. It also takes the technologies, the languages of Spark, Python, SQL, Scala, and a few others. And it also has an administrative side where you're spinning up dedicated SQL pools versus Spark pools. And there's a lot of interworking between those. So what I would suggest is kind of what Shannon did was look for, because of the expense of this, you have to have an Azure subscription to do a lot of the labs within this environment. But with the Learn site, we have labs that are dedicated, like DP080, which is not a certification, but it is an exam. And it has these great sandboxes where you can learn to do Transact SQL. And you have a little sandbox where you can go through it. And I send students there all the time so they can brush up on those. The same with Spark, Python, Anaconda, download SQL Server 2019, and it installs, it gives you the ability to install Spark or Python. It also installs some other elements like Anaconda, where you can do Jupyter notebooks and notebooks inside of the SQL Server Developer Edition. So there's plenty of ways to do this, and you can still get the data sets locally and do the same code. It's transferable, whether it's on premises or in the cloud. The only difference is the connection strings. So
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. So I'm going to really quick to show our audience the new Microsoft Learn website. Remember, if you go to learn.microsoft.com, you're gonna land in this website, and we've made a lot of changes to make things easier for all of you. So now you can find easier all the training and certification resources, technical training and certification resources that we have available in Microsoft. So you can find all your documentation. If you are if you were a frequent user of Docs, Microsoft Docs, this is our technical documentation. It lives here under documentation. In training, you can find self-paced training or traditional learning paths and modules, all those that Giuliani, Shannon, and James have been mentioning. You find them here, and there is a really nice way to find by product, or you can browse and you can find and filter by technologies, or if you are an advanced beginner, by roles, all these roles that we have mentioned here. So Shannon was talking about data analysts. So this is all the content that we recommend for data analysts, for example, and you can filter and play around here. But also, if you prefer instructor-led training, we have a network worldwide of Microsoft Learning partners that will help you with instructor-led training. And you can browse here all the courses, like even those that we've been talking about, like DP203, for example, the course to prepare for data engineering on Azure. So you can find a course here as well if you are interested. So we have plenty of resources here. And what about certifications? You can also find all the certifications here, um, all the ones that we've been talking about. And you can, again, the filtering and the search and the browse is very similar experience across all the pages. So it's easy to find information here. You can find code samples also, a lot of code samples, because that's one of the things that Juliani, Shannon, and James have shared is like, go and try the technology. So if you have access to subscriptions, you can find the samples here, but also if you are doing learning paths and modules, a lot of the learning paths and modules have sandbox. I think James, you were talking about sandbox, and in a lot of the content on Microsoft Learn, you don't need a subscription because we provide that for you. And if you want the labs for the training, you can also have all the scripts for the labs, and then you can go and do on your own. And there is a show that is called Exam Readiness. I wanted to talk about this one, Microsoft Learn Exam Readiness. This is the exam readiness zone. And here we have um, resources to help you prepare for the different exams. And we have been working on releasing new content. So we don't have all the exams here, but on a weekly basis, we are releasing new content, new exams. So you will start seeing more and more and more here. I'm gonna use one, just the DevOps, to show you what you can find here, but you can find videos for where we explain to you, our technical experts explain to you how to prepare for exams, what topics to consider, and they go a little bit into the specific goals and topics that are covered in the exams, but you can also find study guides here with links to more content to help you prepare, and you find um, a practice test when we have available practice test for that particular exam. So this is a very valuable resource that you can find here in shows in Microsoft Learn. So take a look at the exam, Microsoft Learn exam readiness. So a lot of great things that are easier to find now on Microsoft Learn. And we were talking about the profile. So if you link here, you can see your profile with your dashboard. So you can see all your information here available to you. Um, Now, when we were talking about how we create the exams, I just show here exams and certifications and self-paced learning and events and courses. So, and exam readiness resources. So if I'm preparing for an exam, how do I choose? How do I know that if I go with learning paths or with a course with a learning partner, which one is best for me? Like, are they similar content? Are they aligned to the exam? So how do we ensure that people have the right resources to get ready? Anybody?
I can start with this one. I think this is a matter of preference, I would say. The great news is that the content that is covered on Microsoft Learn is the very same content that is going to be taught in the instructor-led training courses, with the exception that if you take that instructor-led training course, you have access to an expert at your fingertips. It's structured. You're going to have probably some of the best trainers in the world walking you through it. So that if sitting through a very structured course and you're able to set aside 4 days for the role-based certifications, 1 day for the fundamentals. If you're able to set that time aside, that's probably a really great option. If you're more of a person that likes to learn a little bit every day or work in kind of bits and pieces and do, more self-paced kind of learning, perhaps the Learn content and the learning paths are the best choices for you. So I think it's a matter of preference, but the great news is that the high quality content is going to be the same regardless of which method you choose. Anyone have anything to add to that?
What about practice test?
Yeah, so I think that the practice tests that are available through Microsoft Learn, that we have an official partner that writes the practice tests, they are very, very similar to the actual certifications themselves. So I would highly recommend using those practice tests. The one caveat is the practice tests, there is a charge for them. They're not free. So if you want to kind of simulate the types of questions that you're going to get on the practice test or on the test itself, there are quizzes at the end of every module, and we call those knowledge checks. So that's where I would start with the practice tests. But I do also find the practice tests very, very helpful when preparing for the certification exam.
Yeah,
Awesome.
there, I would agree with Shannon on that because it's the problem that we have with the learned content is that they're going to be typically a select um, type of exam question, what we would call like an M1 type question. Whereas on the actual certification practice test, you're going to be able to see the 6 or 7 different types of questions that you may run into, which may include a drag and drop, which may be a build out, and it may actually include something where we have a performance-based testing on some exams, a PBT. And that's where you actually are entering into an Azure subscription during an exam and actually banging keyboards. So it's really relevant to do those practice exams. And be cautious though, there's a lot of people that share information on the web that will go out there and they'll just share it and they sell it, and it's not very good. So be very cautious about which practice exams you buy. We use a particular one at Microsoft for our own exams, and also check with your employer because many employers will actually subscribe to those certification exam sites and give you either a steep discount or free practice exams as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Um, I got a suggestion. I think there is a question on T-SQL, but I'm not seeing it.
Oh, I already answered that in the chat.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So we just wanted to show you some of the labs that you may find in the content in the self-paced training learning paths or modules. So when you are doing a learning pad or a module, sometimes you will find this exercise. And this exercise means that there may be here a laboratory. In this case, this lab is using the sandbox area. So that means that you can launch the lab here and you don't need your Azure subscription. This one is it's included already on Microsoft Learn. So it's very nice because you have the instructions and you have the virtual machine that contains all the stuff that you need to do your laboratory. So this is one way to find if you are doing a learning pad or a module and you see an exercise. That's because that's a practical exercise on how to use the whatever you are learning there. And then this is the other interesting thing, the knowledge checks. I think Shannon, you suggested to check the knowledge checks because this is, hey, you just did some content, and did you get what you were learning? So this is a nice way to check. It's like, okay, do I need to go back and redo the lesson or redo the practice, the exercise, so I know that I have this content. Okay, we have 3 minutes before we end, and now I want to give you, each one of you, 1 minute to your best recommendation for our learners to prepare for exams. So what is it gonna be?
I can take that one. I would
Each
say,
one of you.
oh, it's just one.
You
Oh,
have one
anyone
minute
wants?
for you.
Oh, 1 minute for each. Okay. I would say practice, practice, practice. I don't think that there's any other way of learning without getting your hands dirty. So try to whatever you learn, right? Even if it's a theory in a piece of paper, you have a lot of text, but try to transcribe that into real actions, right? Even if it's your own company, if you have a way to implement wherever you're running, even it's a tiny bit, it will put you ahead with the implementation feel, right? Which is mostly required with most of those certifications require implementation aspect or hands-on experience. So I would say that the theory is very bright and very beautiful, but without the hands-on experience, it's just theory. So just keep practicing.
Awesome. Shannon.
Yes, I agree with Giuliani completely. And I will add, for me, the best way to prepare was to work with other like-minded people. So either find someone else at your organization that is trying to learn, or find a local user group. The community, the data platform community, is incredibly strong. You can find us on LinkedIn, you can find us on Twitter, you can find us on the Microsoft community. So find some friends, form a study group, and work together.
The DPS community. We are here in DPS. That's a great advice. What about you, James? What's your advice?
Yeah, well, I completely support what both Shannon and Giuliani said. What I do is I call myself the Roomba of learning. I know Shannon and Giuliani have both seen that because I make mistakes. I learn through mistakes, and the only way that you can learn through mistakes is by doing. And the easiest way to do that is, instead of just worrying about saying, I don't have a subscription, I can't learn this. Download the tools, download Anaconda, download Docker. There's plenty of tools out there, because each time you do one of these things, you're learning about not just that product. You may be trying to learn SQL Server, and you get to the cloud and you find out, you know what, this SQL Server doesn't fit our needs as well as Azure MySQL, right? It's a different tool. We're not strictly focused in the cloud on all of Microsoft's stack. We're an open source shop, and we completely support people migrating from MySQL, PostgreSQL directly to Azure. We support those in a PaaS environment. So don't be afraid to get your feet wet and learn something new, and be the Roomba of learning like me. Because I come from a growth mindset. I am a growth mindset. So
Awesome.